Every year, Google gets around 3 million resumes. Other companies under the FANG umbrella, the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Googles of the world, or shall we call them MANG now, because Facebook is now renamed to Meta. Anyway, these companies also get similar amount of interest from potential candidates. While the benefits and the salaries of these FANG-MANG companies are top-notch, in this video, I want to make an argument for working in a startup instead. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Aparna and I am an early retiree living her best life in Hawaii. I have worked as a software engineer for the last 10 years or so in startups and in big companies like Netflix. So I would love to share with you my journey and what I thought about working in a very small team in a fast-paced startup environment versus working in a big tech company like Netflix. This video may be relevant for you if you're just curious about knowing the culture differences between a big company and a small one, or if you have offers from two companies and you are very confused which one to pick, this video might just be right for you. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The number one reason a startup can be a great choice is that you get proximity to mentors. Every company can have incredibly talented leadership, but it is the access to those people that matters. When you're working in a big company, there are so many hierarchies that you need to jump, and it is going to be incredibly more difficult for you to reach this person and really take advantage of all the experience and knowledge that they've acquired over the years to become this subject matter expert. For example, I knew somebody at my previous companies that had written part of jQuery or were on the JavaScript committee. While it was really cool to know these people and meet them in certain meetings, it was really hard for me to get time separately with them and learn day to day. Unless you're working and pair programming on a project with this person, you're not going to be able to get the benefit of all of their experience and mentorship. And in a startup, many times it's possible that the CTO is one of those people that has made meaningful contributions in open source code bases or other big company projects that you may not have experienced before. And if in a startup you are the second or the third hire, most likely this person is going to be training you one-on-one for hours, days, and weeks to come. There is so much that you could be learning from this person in this environment as opposed to in a big company where the most amount of time you will get with them is to say hi or hello or meet in a couple of meetings and just be wowed by their achievements. All that being said, even if you find somebody that you really wish to learn from in a bigger company, go approach them and ask them what are the ways in which you could help them so you can get more mentorship from them as much as possible. My point here is it's just going to be easier in a startup because they will be spending naturally so much more time with you. My next point for a startup is that you can get more responsibility in a much shorter amount of time. Because the size of the teams in startups is so small and lean, there is no other option for the leadership to give you much more responsibility in a shorter amount of time. For example, when I was working at a company that had acquired a startup, even though the company was big, the way our team worked was like a startup. I was working on creating iOS applications and I did everything from designing the UI to coding the backend services to figuring out how we are going to send push notifications, all the way up to submitting this app to Apple and working on updates in the App Store. There were so many nuances in the process of this entire life cycle that I'd learned working in that startup-y environment that I never got to see at, say, Netflix, where I was working on a very, very specific small part of the app, and there were teams that were dedicated just for the submission of the app process, for example. So in this case, I was diving deeper into a certain part of the product, but I wasn't getting enough knowledge of the rest of the process. Another area that you'll be exposed to in a startup is all the business side of things. So one day, if you want to start your own company, I encourage you to keep your eyes and ears open whenever those discussions are happening and ask for playing a little bit of a role in sales, marketing, and business. That way you're going to get some experience and take your leadership skills to the next level. The next point for working in a startup is accountability. There is a lot of pressure when you're working in a startup because you are responsible for a huge part of the business and you don't have too many people to lean on to if something goes wrong or if there is a deadline. You're the only person working on something and you're the only person who has this knowledge, so you have to really step up. If you're in a part of your life where focusing on your career and giving it all is your goal, working in a startup can really help you flourish. It may not be suitable for everybody, because if you're on call all the time and you're getting buzzed at night and you have a family and kids to take care of, maybe this isn't the best season of your life to be working on such things. But if you are okay taking that pressure, you will be held accountable for more and more responsibilities. This level of responsibility will push you continuously, and you will be developing this sort of grit that you'll carry throughout your career. Next, in a startup, you will be having a larger impact because you will be responsible for a bigger part of the business or the product. Your impact on the company itself will be larger. This is a big contrast, working in a startup versus a big company. In a big company, you will potentially be having a larger impact on the number of people because usually big companies have a larger audience. For example, Netflix has 200 million subscribers. So if you wrote a small feature, millions and millions of people are going to see that. In a startup, because they'll probably only have 10, 20, 50,000 users, you will be having a bigger impact on the overall product, but on less people. The scale is very different comparing a startup to a bigger company. The next thing that you could be doing great at a startup is learning many facets of the business. While at a big company, you'll only probably be coding. The max you'd be doing is talking to the product design and other teams that are relevant to the specific part of the product that you work on. But there is a potential that in the startup, you could be talking to potential clients, other companies, software tools, making relationships outside of the company and getting to know a lot of the business. This level of exposure can help you grow your leadership skills, and eventually when you venture out into creating your own company or going to another bigger company, you could land a more senior position. With all of these pros being listed, there are certain caveats. A startup might not be the best for you. It all depends on what phase of life you're in, how much energy you have to dedicate to some other company. Personally speaking, at this phase of life where I have a family to run and many other things that I'm exploring, I don't think I'll be able to work 16 hours a day in a startup. But if you're just getting started and you don't have many other commitments, it might be a right choice for you. Another word of caution is that the startup world can be very unstable. You might lose your job anytime. The company might lose their funding and shut shops. It might be extremely high pressure. The pay might be a lot less, and eventually you might not feel gratified enough to be doing so much work. So in this case, just as it goes in other areas of life, you will need to weigh the pros and cons. Is it that the learnings and exposure that you're going to get in this startup so much more valuable than all the other hardships that you're going to face? And then a startup is going to be a good choice for you. I would definitely recommend asking them a lot of questions. Usually when it's a big company, they are the ones who are grilling you in interviews. But when you are interviewing for a startup, I would recommend looking through their business, through their numbers, learning about their finances, and then asking them tons and tons of questions before taking up that offer. You could even be asking all the team members that already work in the startup their backgrounds and match certain interests if there are certain things that you want to learn from them. And it might be a good way for you to get excited about all of this hard work that you're going to do, because in the end, it has to be worth for your while. So if you are in the boat where you can't decide whether your next career move can be a startup or a big company, I hope I made it a little bit easier for you to understand what goes on inside a startup and what are the pros and cons of working in a smaller company versus a big one. As always, if you have questions, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.